In this video, we will make a comparison between two popular ARPG titles, Path of Exile and Last Epoch. When comparing two games, it's easy to fall into the trap of focusing on the negatives and defending our fandom for a specific title. People easily throw sentences around like "this game's bad" or "that game sucks." That's not the direction I want us to take in this video. Instead, we will focus on what's unique about each title, the differences and similarities between both games. And I want to describe the type of experience you can expect from Last Epoch and Path of Exile. I am planning to make such comparisons for more titles, so let me know in the comments section which games would you like me to compare. Without further ado, let's jump into the strengths of each individual game, starting with Last Epoch. The first thing that comes to my mind when I'm thinking about Last Epoch is the skill system. I think it's the best skill system in ARPGs to this date. This system offers a unique blend of being approachable and well presented to players, while being at the same time deep, creative, and allowing fuck ton of builds options. One of the things I like about the skills in Last Epoch is that the system does not force me into focusing on one ability only. Sure, the builds still have usually one main ability that deals most of the damage, but all the complementary skills are just as nicely cooked as the main one is. See, upgrading 5 skills of your choice does not take anything away from the main ability in Last Epoch. This is because each skill has its own separate and individual skill tree and levels. For comparison, the system in Path of Exile makes you focus primarily on boosting one main skill that will ultimately become a 6-link ability. And since only body armor and two-handed weapons offer such 6 links possibilities, many builds run one 6 links main skill setup, due to the limitations of the socketing system. The skill system in Last Epoch also promotes very much synergistic approach to crafting powerful builds. This means that one skill can enhance statistics or even activate another ability thanks to nodes in its skill tree. Personally, I love this approach to skills, and I find Last Epoch's system to be the best in the business. Let's now talk about the second great thing about Last Epoch, the creative build options. On top of already mentioned skill system, we also get items that are just fun to use. Many items in Last Epoch have interesting impact on the skills in your arsenal and are not just a bit stronger statistics. Many ARPGs unfortunately fall into a trap of boring unique or legendary items which end up being just stronger raw stats boosts to your build, and I think that's boring. Luckily, that's not the case in Last Epoch, at least for the most part. These unique items tend to alter how the skills perform, sometimes giving us further synergies between our abilities. As a result, the game offers so many fun builds to try that I end up with a problem of having too many builds I want to play and not enough time. And that's a good problem to have in ARPG. And lastly, we have to talk about Circle of Fortune, which is an innovation to the genre for solo self-found characters progression. This is huge for the genre. Typically, if there is trading in an ARPG game, then deciding not to trade with other players is a handicap to your progression. Besides satisfaction, you get nothing for making solo self-found character. And here is where the innovation of Last Epoch comes. The Circle of Fortune adds powerful benefits to your loot drops when you choose to ignore trading system in the game. And while not perfect, this faction system is really neat addition. With enough progression, you get loot showers in Last Epoch, increasing chances of getting the loot to improve your character. I hope that the industry will take notice of this system and starts implementing such mechanics and rewards into ARPGs. And now let's shift towards PoE, starting with the build depth and variety. PoE has an insane amount of possible builds with almost 300 active skill gems and more than 170 support gems. The game offers just a crazy number of builds to craft when you combine things together. This is further expanded by skills not being tied to classes and ascendancies. In fact, Path of Exile is the most complex ARPG for quite a few reasons, and deep stats are one of them. It's a theory crafter's heaven, with limitless combinations of passives, gear and skills. Sure, some builds are stronger than others, but When you put together 7 classes, almost all of them with 3 different ascendancies, plus 300 active abilities and more than half of that number of ability modifiers, you start understanding how limitless and vast the build options are in this game. Classes in PoE also offer a lot of flexibility in terms of building your character. You may meet Templar who wields big-ass two-handed sword, plays shield-wielding indestructible force burning foes, cast totems or directly unleashes spells on his enemies. Though there is a trade-off when it comes to classes in PoE. They are not as unique as classes in other ARPGs, since the main differentiating factors are the statistics. The next best in PoE is the highest tempo of area clearing I have ever seen in an ARPG. You know, the essential ingredient of any good story is change. And Path of Exile tells you a story of your character's power progression like no other ARPG on the market. In fact, I think I have never played a video game with a bigger shift in speed between the first minutes of gameplay and few hours in as I experienced in Path of Exile. The game goes from a sluggish tempo of one enemy posing a big threat and taking ages to die, to one click to obliterate entire screens of enemies late in the game. Of course, such gameplay style transformation won't fit everyone. It can be boring and unrewarding for some of you, but I have to say it gives me a huge dopamine spike and power fantasy high. It's quite a lot of fun to feel your character is so damn powerful after struggling in the beginning. And so, watching a video of someone else clearing maps is not very appealing to me, but doing the same thing myself, quite enjoyable experience. And then we have the abundance of endgame systems in Path of Exile. If the number of options available for character progression made your head square, wait till you hear about the number of endgame systems in Path of Exile. I am sure you at least heard about the base endgame system in PoE, the mapping. It's a well-done endgame loop that keeps players hooked for years. But what PoE did great over the years is avoiding complacency in their endgame design. New leaks introduce unique systems that, listen carefully here Diablo 4, stay in the game after the season ends. Currently, PoE has, and I shit you not, more than 20 endgame systems added to the game on top of mapping. Some are more complex than others. You may end up loving some mechanics, hate other systems, but all in all they are unique, usually deep and well-polished additions to the game. From what I can tell, you can ignore whichever league mechanics you actually dislike and focus on doing the ones you like the most. And if you get bored of what you are usually doing, then you can just dive into another activity, and I think that's awesome. Alright, now that we got the best of the both titles discussed, let's talk about the differences between Last Epoch and Path of Exile, starting with the art style. In my opinion, PoE has better art style than Last Epoch. Last Epoch team, admittedly, clearly works towards improving their game's visual and audio quality, but PoE is just on another level in terms of atmosphere through the art style direction. There is more grim, grit, darkness and seriousness to atmosphere in PoE, especially when you use a reshade preset to tone down the colors in the game. Last Epoch maps in comparison look more generic, and I feel the usage of time-traveling team is undercooked in the game as well. I think they could do more cool stuff with it, and I hope they will in the future cycles. Next, I want to talk about the approach of both games to experimentation and respecking. See, respecking your character to try out new builds is quite a fun part of ARPGs. Some players like to use cookie-cutter builds from websites like Maxroll and other alike. But other players like to experiment with builds, figuring out different ways to play the class, or what works best for them. Path of Exile is a very unforgiving game for respecking your character. Not so much mechanically, but in terms of the cost of changing up your stats in the game. Doing some fine-tuning of your character's stats is quite expensive if you want to completely change your build. It's also very easy to severely break your character when you are new or inexperienced in build crafting. So you generally tend to stick to some build guide to avoid having terrible experience down the road and having to re-roll new character. Last Epoch, on the other hand, makes it cheap and approachable to respec your character completely. There is no significant cost to rerolling your stats, and relearning active skills does not take long time, especially in the endgame. What's pain in the ass in Last Epoch, however, is the technical side of changing your passive skills. Sometimes you cannot delete passives earlier in the tree, unless you delete all passives to the right, even though they are unrelated. It's really freaking annoying, and I hope they sort it out soon. And so, early league decision on what build to roll is quite a significant one in Path of Exile, while Last Epoch tends to promote experimentation with builds. Now let's talk about technical performance, which is not an exciting topic, but in this case can make quite a difference. Path of Exile is much smoother in terms of game's technical performance. Sure, FPS can tank in maps with full screen of enemies, but for the most part, my FPS stays above 100 even with plenty of enemies on the screen while I'm casting my skills. Last Epoch, on the other hand, struggles with performance. The team behind the game made significant improvements over the years, but the game is still very inconsistent with FPS drops. With my rig sporting Ryzen 5800X and Nvidia 3070, I go from 160 or 40 FPS in calm moments to 30-60 in busy fights with some stutters. It's probably the most annoying issue I am having with Last Epoch, so I find it worth mentioning as a differentiating factor between both games. Another major difference between both titles is their approach to monetization. Path of Exile is a free-to-play game with an in-game cash shop. The in-game cash shop has two types of products: cosmetic items, and they have shit ton of those, and stash tabs. Stash tabs are very useful in this game due to how trading works. You post your items on the market with premium stash tabs to sell the gear. Last Epoch is a buy-to-play game with an upfront cost of approximately $35, depends where you are located. There are also microtransactions with only cosmetics available in the online mode, so far at least. There are no convenience-based purchase options. Stash tabs in Last Epoch are obtainable via in-game currency, and I think the limit is like 255 tabs or so. Overall, Last Epoch requires a bigger upfront financial investment, but if you get into either game, Last Epoch ends up being the cheaper one over time, at least so far, while PoE can be as expensive or cheap as you want it to be. Next, let's discuss the smoothness of gameplay in both titles. Last Epoch movement and ability casting feels to me more organic, smooth and fluid. Most builds I have tried felt pleasant to play, and the abilities I was mainly using had that nice kick to them. Most classes have responsive and well-animated abilities, though I have to say that the newer classes have much better skill animations than the old ones. When it comes to Path of Exile, the best description of its gameplay I could think of is that the game is precise but a bit stiff. Don't get me wrong, it's quite accurate, efficient and gets the job done, but lacks that oomph factor to fluidity of animations and movement you get to experience in other ARPGs, like Last Epoch. Though it's a very subjective topic, and your experience may highly differ based on the skills and the builds you are using. To me, the gameplay from smoothness and animations perspective feels in Path of Exile similar to Diablo 2, while Last Epoch is more like Diablo 3, if that makes sense. And speaking about subjective topics, let's touch on fun factor in both titles. Both Last Epoch and Path of Exile give me tons of fun, but they do it differently. I get fun from feeling that power fantasy rush in PoE, where my character goes from weakling to a fast killing machine, zooming through the map, killing everything with lightning thunders bouncing between enemies. While slower in gameplay, Last Epoch gives me more excitement to try new classes than PoE does. I feel the rush of anticipation to try new builds and figure out new ways to play a character in Last Epoch. For PoE, once I find that one build which appeals to me, I tend to stick to it for that league's time, and rarely do I feel compelled enough to start a new twink. This is largely due to uniqueness of each class in Last Epoch, as well as synergistic skills combinations in the game. PoE just doesn't do that for me, even though some abilities look really nice, and I am excited to try them out with another league start. On the flip side, in PoE I can spend big chunk of my time sitting in my hideout trying to find good items on the market to improve the build a little bit more. I have to say I don't feel the same level of excitement in Last Epoch when it comes to fine-tuning my builds. Once I get it rocking, I am just content with its power fantasy, and then I usually switch to another build. Now, I bet most of you will relate to my feeling of trying Path of Exile for the very first time. You create a character, get your first level up, open passive skill tree, and be like, whoa bro, what the fuck is this? This huge freaking web of Final Fantasy X skill tree on steroids can be very intimidating. The same thing happens when you finish the campaign and open the Atlas tree. The visual presentation in Path of Exile can be really daunting, when the game throws at you whole system in a split of a second. I believe that Last Epoch does a much better job at easing you into the systems. When you level up for the first time, the first passive skill tree you see looks manageable, right? You have like 3 options with only few nodes ahead of you to check for consequences of your choices. Even if you are a newbie, you can work with that. Then 20 levels or so in, you get to explore more passive trees for each mastery. The active skill trees system may feel more overwhelming with the big number of choices, but it also eases you in with time. You get to choose one active skill to level up at first, and you also do not have that many choices from the beginning. This information presentation style is just much easier for broader audience in Last Epoch than it is in Path of Exile, which in my opinion helps make Last Epoch feel more approachable and easier to learn than the PoE. And the last topic I want to touch in this video is the potential longevity of both games. Path of Exile is certainly a more reliable investment of your time and money at this stage, simply due to the track record it has over the years. Even though Path of Exile 2 is expected to come out soon, PoE 1 was promised to continue with its development running parallel to PoE 2. Also, I heard that any purchases we make in PoE 1 should carry over to PoE 2, which is sweet if true. Furthermore, we know the level of quality and future support we can expect from PoE developers. They've been around for years, we know what we can expect from them. And then we have Last Epoch, which is admittedly more risky choice of investment. It's possible that Last Epoch will have great future, full of exciting additions to the game. Who knows, perhaps the team will come with more innovative ideas like Circle of Fortune to further the genre's perspective on what's the standard in ARPGs. But it's also possible that the game will simply disappear from our radars, with the developers team flipping the switch to put the game on a live support. Since it's new studio with its first released game, they could just become complacent in their development. Just look at the example of Volsen. Though both GGG and 11th Hour Games seem like great companies that actually give a damn about their customer satisfaction. So I am hopeful that both games have bright future ahead of them. To sum up the points I made in this video, here are the things that each game does better. PoE has numbers going for it, with virtually limitless number of available builds, with 300 active skills in the game. It also has the best stats depth in the genre. PoE also provides tons of options at endgame, with the abundance of systems added over the years. Besides the numbers, the game has more stable technical performance than Last Epoch. PoE has also no initial cost, so it's easy to jump in without any risk and try the game for yourself. The art style is superior in PoE. It's actually very enjoyable and well done. The game has proven track record of quality updates to the game. And then we have Last Epoch, which has more exciting class unique builds. The classes have their own skills, themes, and twists. Last Epoch also has the best skill system in the genre. And you can count on creative loot drops with unique items that can change how you play your class. Last Epoch also has no convenience and utility-based microtransactions in the game, though it still has cosmetics. And lastly, it also has the innovative solo self-found faction system that boosts your loot drops if you choose to go this path. So, depending which upsides fit you more, you will have to answer the question which game is better for you by yourself. To those of you who played both Last Epoch and Path of Exile, which game fits you more? Do you agree with my comparison or have a different opinion about these titles? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, then I would highly appreciate if you drop a like. It only takes a moment of your time, but helps with the video's performance on this platform. I am planning to make more videos comparing games within the same genre. If you'd like to see more of my content in the future, then make sure to hit that subscribe button. Anyway, that's all from me in this video. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.